and get our hopes up. As always, I'm very excited to get new content that seems like it's going to be replayable to some degree, and it's going to be challenging. As someone that hasn't felt really challenged in HSR in a really long time, it's great that now there finally is going to be something that's even more difficult.
Yo, this is T.O.T. Thank you for dropping in today, if you have. I just finished playing a clip from Brax, and I wanted to comment on what he had said because this is something that I haven't addressed yet. When there's certain players who have been completing the end game for a decent amount of time, and they say that they're bored with the end game, they don't find it challenging. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes this is because some of these players have spent so much money on the game that they have literally diminished any challenge that the game has had. This isn't anything that's unique to Honkai Star Rail. The same thing has happened in Genshin Impact in the past. I remember when players would get like C2 Raiden Shogun or Nihida, Farina, whoever it may be, and these players would just absolutely demolish Abyss. And then some of these very same players in the same breath would turn around and be like, I'm bored with the end game. It's not challenging. I have all these strong characters and I'm not able to use them. When it comes to games like Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact, I don't believe that their in-game content for the most part is balanced around spending a good amount of money on the game. Rather, that's hundreds of dollars or even thousands of dollars. Braxxophone is somebody who has spent a pretty good amount of money on Honkai Star Rail, and in turn, he's diminished the challenge of the end games for himself. Now, one thing that I would say is for any person who wants to have the in-game modes to still be challenging is to spend as little money as possible. I don't believe spending on Battle Pass alone is going to put a player in that particular position, or if a person decides to be free to play, you should be able to get some challenge out of the in-game modes. However, if you're a player and you find yourself spending hundreds of dollars on the game constantly every month, eventually the point may come to where the in-game content is no longer going to be challenging. So keep that in mind, that spending money, a lot of money on the game, can become a detriment to your own enjoyment of the game if challenge is a big aspect. To give a quick outside analogy example, this would be like going to a movie theater. The movie is going to be for free. You get up to the ticket booth and you slide the ticket guy a $10 bill and you say, hey, just give me a summary rundown of the movie and tell me how the ending is. You completely defeated the purpose of going out to the movie theater and watching the free movie to begin with by expediting the process. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me personally. Now, I'm not one to tell people what to do with their money. People are grown adults for the most part, but this is just kind of a cautionary thing. As Ares from the OG God of War game would say himself,
there is a price to pay for everything you gain.
Certain players online will often comment how their old teams are no longer able to clear the in-game content. I think a big part of this comes down to somebody spreading out their resources way too thin. Now, if you were a player who started playing Honkai Star Rail back in 1.0, resources were really tight back then. Not from a Jade aspect, but from the aspect of credits, trace level up material, relics, and things along those lines. And back then, we had to really hone in and focus on building maybe only like one team at a time, or maybe even one or two characters. Now, for players who really kept that ingrained into them, they've still been playing in that same kind of notion up to today. The only thing is that they're more cautious about using their Jades instead of their credits and things along those lines. I think this is going to be an issue for a lot of new players coming in because they're going to be in this huge honeymoon phase where they get hit with a ton of resources up front, and then those resources are going to run dry pretty quickly. And because they haven't really been conditioned to learning how to manage their resources properly, I wouldn't be surprised if they continuously invest into new things while not having enough investment into their older team comp formations. I think Acheron has been one of the most clear examples that I can bring up. There are probably people in the community who will say Acheron sucks, for example, which is completely not true. What some of these players have ended up doing is they didn't invest enough into the Acheron team to keep her a viable option. They skipped Zhao Shou, they didn't get Silver Wolf for whatever reason, and then for Cypher, it could be for various reasons. Whether they decided that they wanted to go for Tribby instead, they were saving for Finon, the Fate collab, or maybe they just didn't have any Jades because they had just recently got casters. Those are probably going to be some of the most common reasons. The thing is if somebody decides to use an Acheron team and they're still using Pela and Gwenithan with her in 2025, you just can't expect to get that same efficiency type performance as you would have with Acheron Acheron when she originally released. Over time, if you want a particular character to continue to perform well, you have to be willing to continue to invest in their team. Spreading your resources too thin is one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of players make on their accounts. And even though this is something that can be fixed, it is a very common issue that pops up with a lot of player accounts. More is not always better. There's also a demographic of players who have the tendency of speedrunning or blitzing through all the new content as soon as it's released. They'll typically do this within the first week or 2 weeks of a patch release, and then very commonly a good number of these players will be bored after the fact, saying something along the lines that they don't have anything to do, and etc, etc. What I would personally say to any of these players is we have 6 weeks when these new patches drop. This content does not have to be done all in one speed blitz run. Now, for the players who are deciding to still do this regardless, I would personally recommend that they have other games to play, whether that's console games, other PC games, other gacha games, real life activities, whatever the case may be. If Honkai Star Rail is a person's only game that they play, the only thing I could really caution is to maybe space things out, like with the Infurious storyline, for example. Instead of sitting down and maybe doing 2 sessions, maybe do multiple 1 to 2 hour sessions when it comes to the story progression. So that way you have it spread out across a longer period of time, and it's less likely that you're going to get burnt out. This is my personal suggestion. Alright, so finally, as the last talking point that I would like to have on this topic is try to avoid content creators who have a tendency of pitting companies against one another. So in the gacha space right now, the biggest comparison is content creators who will pit MiHoYo against Kuru games. There are MiHoYo content creators out there who will bring up Kuru games in a negative light to make the MiHoYo game seem better, and then there are Kuru game content creators who will do the same thing by propping their game up by constantly talking bad about MiHoYo games and not giving credit where credit is due. Me personally, this isn't a rhetoric that I want to have as a standard trend. For the most part, I look at MiHoYo games in their own ecosystem and I compare MiHoYo games on their own merits, and I don't have to bring up Kuru games in a negative light to make the MiHoYo games seem better. With that being said though, I do think that there is plenty of food on the table for both Kuru games and MiHoYo to both exist at the same time, and the food is the consumer base. This is no different from if I was to make a comparison with God of War versus the Devil May Cry games. Yes, Devil May Cry games do certain things better than the God of War games and vice versa, but within the action genre there's a big enough of fan base to where both of these IPs can coexist. If you have taken enough time to watch this or listen to this, I just want to say thank you for your time. You be safe out there. Deuces.
That paradise may be a savor it for me.
blade knows no mercy.
Bending the rules. There's no backing out now, for me or you.
That paradise may be unreachable. Savor it for me. Receive divinity. Unnecessary. Fail to sense. That paradise. Savor it for me.
Time for a lesson. Is it coming?
You impede me. Fail to sense.
Bending the rules. Give an inch and they'll take 'em.
I'll see you off. Bloom. Unnecessary. Too little.
There's no backing out now. For me or you. Who's the little backstabber?
I will dispatch you. Fail to sense. That paradise may be unreachable. Savor it for me. Receive divinity. Eternal stay. And return!
Lose some, win some. I always deliver.
Fail to sense.
Time for a lesson. Just crazy. There's no backing out now. For me or you.
Your end approaches.
Who's the little backstabber?
Fail to sense. That paradise may be unreachable for me. Savor it for me.
Is it coming?
Fail to sense. Bloom. Unnecessary. Well-timed. Receive divinity.
Yes, I owe you.
Fail to sense.
Bending the rules.
Eternal slip. And return! That paradise, savor it for me. You impede me.
Time for a lesson. There's no backing out now. For me or you.
You chose the wrong enemy.